So two things we get asked about all the time: barnwood finishes for the top when you're staining and you're doing a little bit of dry brushing, and spraying milk paint. So today we're going to cover both.
So this is the Critter sprayer. This is the one we primarily use for spraying milk paint. You can spray other paints and finishes with it, but I feel like I get a better finish out of the other paints with this HVLP sprayer. The milk paint tends to chip and crackle and get a heavy distress anyway, so if it's not the neatest spray job, it's alright if we have this sprayer here for the milk paint. And the milk paint will foul up your HVLP. All these metal pieces in here, instead of just having one tube that siphons up the paint to clean, it's really hard to clean this and get it to work right again after using milk paint with it.
So we mixed up this milk paint. We've got 1 part milk paint to 1 part warm water, and then we also added the extra bond in here because it's really, really slick. We shook it really good, and it's been sitting for about half an hour. You want to let your milk paint sit, so that way you can make sure that it's blended really well. Make sure you strain it, and also if you're going to be spraying, you're going to need to use an immersion blender to mix it up and make sure there's no chunk.
Alright, so because we're spraying this, I'm going to do the spraying first. Even if I was brushing, I would probably paint it with a brush first, which you could totally do with the milk paint. I'm going to paint first, that way I don't get any overspray where I've sanded, and that way I also don't have to worry about taping it off. I'll spray, then I'll sand this down, stain it, and then we'll do the faux finish, the faux weathered wood finish on the top. So most of the time we'll spray a piece with the drawers in it. These drawers have a lip. They hang over the edge, so I'm going to spray them out. That way we don't have that weird overlap on the actual dresser itself. Alright, so everything is all painted. I've got 80 grit sandpaper on the random orbital sander. I have 60 grit, but I don't want to gouge the wood real bad. It's not a real heavy finish on this, so I just want to take it off. I'll finish it with 120 grit, that way it smooths it out for the stain and it's not real rough and I don't have squiggles in the wood. And then Jamie will stain it and do the faux finish on here. Alright, so it's pretty bright outside. Obviously you can't see some of the squiggles that are in here. I'm going to finish it off with some 120 grit, and that way that'll smooth out some of the squiggles. So to get real close on these edges so that I don't mess up the finish down here, I'm just going to hand sand right down here on the bottom, and there's just a little bit of paint down there from when I sprayed it, and it's coming off real quick.
Alright, so the next step is going to be staining the top. We're using Real Stain number 1. It's an all-natural milk stain. It's really great because it's not oil-based, it's water-based, which means in 15 minutes we'll be ready to dry brush. I'm using a rag, not a brush, because I don't want to flop over the edges where the paint is. Okay, so we're using DIY White Swan, and I'm using my Paint Pixie brush. And the trick with dry brushing is, see how there's not a lot of paint on that brush? That's perfect. You just want to dip just the end in it and dry off most of it, and then you're going to come through and you're going to dry brush, and you're going to add the white back on. If you get too much on there, you can just take and smear it with a damp rag. The water-based stain and the water-based paint will blend together. I'm kind of doing it random, so it doesn't look like there's a pattern. So it's 102 degrees out here and it's drying faster than I want. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back over it with the stain to try to even it out a little bit. Because it's water-based, you can kind of manipulate it and play with it, which is a good thing. As I'm going over it, you can see that this is blending it and giving me some nice variation in gray tones, which is exactly what I want, so it looks more like barnwood. I'm using my DeWalt orbital sander with 220 sandpaper. I'm gonna go across all the flat surfaces and smooth them out and go and distress all the edges. All right, so we moved this operation inside because it really is 250,000 degrees out there. We're gonna be using Sweet Pickens Oil Wax. You probably can't see the label because it's really dirty, but I promise you that's what it is. I'd like to shake it and pour it in a little cup. Just pour out what I think I'm gonna need because I don't think I'm gonna be able to fit that back in there. I'm just using a chip brush because I'm gonna throw it away when I'm done. These are like under 50 cents at like Walmart or Home Depot. And I'm just gonna brush the oil wax on. Doesn't have to be perfect. And this works, I get asked a lot, this works over milk paint. It also works over chalk paint. And I'm also going to use it over this stained top here. It looks real dark, but once I rub it off and buff it in, it'll lighten up quite a bit.
I feel like I'm basting the top of like some meat for the barbecue.
4th of July barbecue?
Yep. I don't know, I feel like once we wipe this off, I think the variations will come back. Like you'll still get that light and dark where it doesn't quite take all the way where the paint is. Look how glossy that is before I wipe it off.
I know, well it gets kind of a satin sheen. We've let this sit for about 15-20 minutes and we're gonna go ahead and wipe it off. I like to have 2 lint-free cloths, one to wipe it off and one to buff it in. Old t-shirts work good.
Oh, the white's coming back. I
Yeah.
knew it! It's just darker. Oh, it looks, it's really, you lost all your dry brush. Like it looks like it's just really old. I'll get good pictures. So I'm just using this one rag to wipe off and then I guess I'll keep this other one to come back through.
Yeah, I just moved.
So one thing I would recommend, we're using a plastic lined drop cloth because this will go through your regular drop cloth if you're using it inside or on your driveway.
So this piece is all the way finished. It was kind of one of those things where we didn't really know exactly what we were gonna do, so you guys kind of followed along with us as we figured it out. Although I still am glad that I dry brushed because some of the white is still coming through, so it looks pretty good. I am gonna throw on one more coat of oil wax on the top just because the raw wood really soaked that up.
We probably won't put the second coat on until tomorrow morning. We'll let this sit overnight and let it soak in real nice, and then we'll put that other coat on, let it sit, and then buff that off.
This dresser kind of has like an apothecary feel to it, which is really cool just because of like all the indents that are in there. It would have been also cool with like cup pulls, but all the original hardware was in really good shape, and I don't think I would get return on my investment if I put the apothecary pulls, because it'd probably be a good 50 bucks. So
yeah.
I went ahead and went with the original hardware on this. It turned out pretty great. Be sure that you hit that notification button because video tomorrow is going to be repair on drawers. There's 2 drawers that are missing runners and Zeb's going to show you how to build them. So if you've ever wanted to know how to repair drawers and replace runners without spending $1 million, hit the notifications button. You're going to want to see that.
Yeah, there's also a loose bottom, and one of the dovetails is blown out on one of the sides. So a few things we've got to fix on these drawers as we were pulling them out that we discovered.
So if you have friends that like this kind of video, be sure to share it. So if you want to do a project and have it look like this, I'll give you a rundown of the products that we use to date. We use Sweet Pickens and Sweetie Jane with some extra bond. On the top we've got Real Stain number 1. We dry brushed on White Swan using our Paint Pixie brush, and the whole piece is sealed with Sweet Pickens Dark Oil Wax. We used about a sample and a half of the oil wax to get the whole piece done.
Yeah, it didn't take a whole lot of oil wax. I thought it would take more because it's a pretty big piece, but...
Well, and the other thing about using milk paint is when you sand it and you wax it, I mean, you get a really smooth finish. So
yeah,
that's what's nice.
I'll be sure to put all those links down below, so if you are interested in getting those, you can find them real easy.
Be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to Jami Ray Vintage for more
DIY.